want to let you know that we appreciate you guys coming to our Tech Talk. For those of you who are not from T-Cetra here, this is something we try to do periodically every month or 2 months or so. So you can keep an eye out on Meetup for those Tech Talks. Subscribe, let us know that you're going to come. Of course, we like to provide some free food, some good conversation, and as you'll hear tonight, some great topics. My name is Zach Bowers. I'm a product owner here at T-Cetra. If you're not familiar with who we are and what we do, you can come find one of us afterwards. We'd love to dive in and talk about some of the exciting things that we have going on. Today's topic is going to be one that is applicable to really anyone if you've ever held a job at any place, anywhere. And it's about teams and what makes teams effective. And not necessarily just in the technical landscape, but teams in general, no matter whether you're in sales, marketing, of course, software, as we all are too. So we're very excited to talk about that, into a study that our guest is going to speak about, and some of the things that he's seen in his own experience, how it sort of explained some of the things that he went through. So I'm very excited to introduce Jason Blackhurst with us. He comes from a technical background, right? Moved from team leads, tech leads, recently director of engineering, and now aspiring leadership and organizational coach. So please join me in welcoming Jason to give us a little overview.
Thank you very much. So as you said, my name is Jason Blackhurst. We're here to talk about taking the toxic out of your team and up the efficiency with the power of Google. If you find that is not what you signed up for, I will not be offended if you leave, but I really appreciate you being here. So the goal of this presentation is to get you to see your team in a new light, to get to the underlying cause that's making your team better or worse, and hopefully give you some ways to affect that. It's going to be part summary of a thing that I've experienced, and then a new perspective that got added onto that as I learned about this project that Google did. So it's going to be part discussion as well. Again, I want your experience. I want what happened with you. So this is going to be a little more than like a root cause analysis. It'll be more like a root cause analysis. It's like what causes things to go wrong in the first place. It's that layer under the cause of your worst team. But first, I know someone in the room, probably a lot of you are thinking like, who is this guy that's going to tell me how to improve my team, not knowing my team, not having any idea what I deal with day to day? It's a valid question. I'm Jason Blackhurst. In the real life and on Twitter, I'm also known as Slim. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Twitter, but those numbers are pretty amazing. 52 followers. Check it out. Up to a lot of good stuff on there. So most of my experience is in federal government. I've been in the tech game for probably 16, and maybe 12 of it has been federal government contracting. And if you know anything about federal government contracting, you know that it's a super stew of inefficiency and pain. They don't do anything fast. They don't do anything safe. It's a slow slog of Sunday blues waiting to go into Monday work. But back to the presentation, that big promise that we can work together to help improve your team. Luckily, I didn't have to do that work. I didn't make that grand claim. In that case, I got lucky. Google did that work. So how did Google do their study? First, they looked at teams. First, they had a pitfall. So first, they looked at team structure. Did you need a senior person and 2 juniors? Did you need 2 seniors and 1 junior? Do you need a BA or a PM, a TPM, a product owner? What do you need in order to form an efficient team? And what they found was that there was no line, there was no correlation between the shape of a team and the efficiency of it. So they pivoted. They pivoted to a project they called Project Aristotle. So Project Aristotle was qualitative and quantitative. They looked at all layers of a team and formed a new hypothesis that it wasn't structure at all, it wasn't experience at all. Instead, they found that it was these 5 factors: psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning of work, and impact of work. Further, they found that these 5 factors were not the same. Their impact on a team and their functionality of it was drastically different. Psychological safety being by far the most important, followed by the rest, in descending order. So further, I'm going to assert that the last two, meaning of work and impact of work, are both least impactful and don't really impact at all unless you have the top three pretty much nailed down. So in order to save some time, I'm just going to highlight those two and then get rid of them. Ta-da. No, first I'm going to at least give a brief summary of those things. So meaning of work is, does the work have meaning to you? Is it personally important? And in some cases that's hard. It could be, are you helping someone on your team? Are you helping make somebody better? Are you helping make somebody work better? Are you helping teach them something new? Impact is very similar. Impact is all about, does your work have impact outside of you? And again, it's not necessarily the in work. It is, are you having an impact? Is the work that you're doing impactful in some way? Maybe you're using your knowledge that you've gained at a local charity to implement a website, or maybe you're helping out teach your kids about Kanban boards or something. Who knows? Does it have impact? So now, back to the three team dynamics. We will talk about these team dynamics in stereotypes. So these will be stereotypically teams that in most cases I've experienced. In a few cases I was the stereotypically terrible team member. I'll try to call those out honestly when we come to them. So the first one let's look at is structure and clarity. Structure and clarity is all about the understanding what everyone on your team does, what contribution they bring, who will answer what questions, who's deciding what's most important for the customer, who is deciding whether or not you go on vacation or you get a pay raise this year. It's about just knowing who does what. Most teams are made up of some combination of dev and QA and maybe a Scrum Master, a QE, a PM, a PMO, a TM, a GYNO, a OBGYN. There's all kinds of team members that can be a part of your team, and none of that matters. Maybe as part of that you're not, agiling Scrum to the letter, but that's not what makes your team efficient or not efficient. So as I was preparing the slides for this, I came across this tweet which kind of sums up a lot of in one easy thing, and that's that if you're looking at a decision that you need to make, it is very valuable to know who has the authority to make that decision and who will be held accountable if that decision fails. So as we move forward, I'll sum that up again at the end. The first stereotypically terrible team is the telephone game. So this is where you have two conflicting requirements, and each one would maybe take a day to implement, but you now have to go claw your way back through he says and she says and find out which one of these things is actually right, which one of these things need implemented. The next one is the lazy dev. So this at one time was me. I feel pretty terrible for it being me, but it was. This is the dev that's not worried about how their work impacts the customer. They're not worried about testing their work and making sure it's just getting the work that they need to get done that day and kind of zoning in. Kind of overcame this for a number of reasons. One is that the organization that I was working at the time was structured poorly, and their QA department was kind of set up to fail. It was set up to where they couldn't get access to the code and they couldn't get access to functional sites until it was really too late. The development cycle had already passed. It was 2 or 3 weeks later. And they restructured to allow that to be a much more faster feedback loop. The second way that changed was that some of the QA staff actually switched out, and those people were amazing to work with. It was very, very easy to go to them and talk about a problem that we were having and how we could resolve that. The next one is the gotcha QA. Like show of hands, who's worked with a person that brought a bug to you that was, if you add 30 characters to someone's middle name and you view it on IE 11 and you crank the resolution up to, 640 by 480, that the first name and the last name would overlap by 2 characters. Anybody worked with that person? So this is it's around who has the authority to say something is wrong with your system? Who's got that ultimate, it's understanding the clarity of who can say this is worth fixing or this is not worth fixing. Now, I've been in organizations where this was great, handled really, really well, and handled really, really poorly. In one situation, the QA would pull something up, this is bad, this needs fixed, and it went right into a dev's hands, and they were responsible for fixing it or fighting it because it wasn't worth fixing. Okay, so I'll move on. The next question is, but how? How can you affect structure and clarity within your team? So this next slide is Google suggestions. So I'm going to take very little liberty in these suggestions. I'm going to read them pretty much word for word from their full text. Regularly communicate team goals and ensure team members understand the plan for achieving them. Ensure your team meetings have a clear agenda and a designated leader, and consider adopting OKRs, objectives, and key results to organize the team's work. So, but those are team actions. Those are things you can do if you're leading a team. There's also the possibility of what can you do within. And my suggestion for that is to communicate, to over-communicate. If you're not clear about something, ask. If you need something lined out, if you don't understand the structure, ask for an org chart. But if you are a little bit confused and you're not exactly sure what it is that you can start with, those two questions from the beginning are a great place to start. If you've got a decision to make, who is the authority to make that decision? And who will be held accountable if that decision fails? Those are great questions to start with. So the next one is dependability, and dependability is just that. Can you depend on the people that you work with? So the first kind of stereotypically terrible team is the cowboy coder. The cowboy coder is the person that just gets the work done, and maybe they don't really pay attention to source control or test code coverage or what the customer wants or going through QA. It's just, this is a problem, it needs fixed now, let's push it to prod. I got this, trust me. And that can become very, very dangerous very, very quickly. When one of those things fail, then you don't have anything to look back on change-wise. The next one is the short timer. This is a story of mine. I was not the short timer. I worked with a short timer. This person had just a year, one short year left until retirement in a federal government agency, and he told us about it every day. Every day, while you were doing the work that was assigned to him, without getting credit for it. Now this is by far kind of an edge case of severity. I worked with someone, again, federal government. He'd been there for a really long time. He was a trusted member of that team, and I honestly don't know how they would have been able to make it better. They would have had to put forth more effort to get rid of him than to just work around him. So I'd be interested if anybody has an example of this one or the next one, which were both severe federal government cases. I'd be interested to find out how that works in the real world. The next one is dependability, the freeloader. So this, again, same example. It was a dev that looked like a dev, but wasn't really a dev. They were just fresh out of college, and they were trying to figure out what minimum amount of work they needed to do in order to have 5 lines on their progress report and no work having been done. It was just, hey, what can I do that I interfaced with the client to triage an urgent issue, and really he forwarded an email he got from someone to a dev. In this case, it was easier to spot and it was easier to fix. So in this case, I really just had to have a very challenging conversation with that person, saying, hey, it's really obvious what you're doing, and it's being seen. People are seeing that you're not really doing much at all. And when you can sit down with a person and have that very frank discussion, have that very challenging discussion, they typically, in my experience, change. That they'll realize that they can't get away with that. Yeah, so the question is, what do you do if you have that conversation and that person gets defensive? I have not run into that situation. But I would say if you go back through and look at, in this case it was status reports, so it was really easy to go back and look and say, all right, this is the line on your status report. what was it that you did, that you actually did, that was represented by that line. So I would say to try to take the suspicion out of it, try to take the guesswork out of it, and look at actual data. What is it that you're doing that contributes? And in this case, I made it very clear up front that this was not a firing thing. This was a conversation where I hope everybody gets better out of it. And if we don't, we'll deal with it again later. But it wasn't you need to change the way you're doing it now. It was just this is the situation we're in. I hope you can help me fix it. Okay, so that's dependability. Now, again, it's an extreme case that we were in, but it's very human to compare. And the question comes up of how is dependability related to efficiency? So in that case, in all of those cases, where you've got one person that's kind of ruining it for everyone, that one person, that behavior is kind of infectious. So you're going to look into a situation, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're on your way to work, and you realize that you can be 10 minutes late and do that thing you needed to do this morning. Or you can skip that thing and be to work on time. But then you're going to start thinking, I'm going to do more in my day than this person does all week. You're going to feel a little bit better about skipping that 10 minutes. And then you're going to feel a little bit better about skipping that hour. And maybe it's not you. Maybe it's someone else in the team. But that behavior affects everyone. It's not just that one person, the freeloader or the cowboy or the short timer that's short timing that organization. It eventually will be a lot more people than just the one. So again, we look to how do we affect dependability in a team? Again, Google's words, taking very little liberty. Clarify roles and responsibilities of team members, develop concrete project plans to provide transparency into every individual's work, and talk about some of the conscientiousness research, which I personally did not know what conscientiousness means, so I looked it up. Here's what conscientiousness means. Conscientiousness is the personality trait of being careful or vigilant. Conscientiousness implies a desire to do a task well and to take obligations to others seriously. Conscientious people tend to be efficient and organized as opposed to easygoing and disorderly. But again, those are kind of organizational suggestions. Those are leader suggestions. What can you do from within? So from within, you can keep your commitments. You can explain deviations. If you need to deviate from your commitment, why did that need to happen? You can discuss the risk up front. And you can keep roles and goals clear. And the last note on this is that honest and frank conversations are sometimes very necessary. And those are very hard at times coming into them. But your team will be better having had them. Also on that note, it doesn't have to come from the boss. So if you notice a behavior like that, you can absolutely talk to that person. Come to them as a friend. So last, but certainly not least, is psychological safety. Psychological safety being by far the most important factor in team efficiency. So psychological safety is about comfort. Are you comfortable with your team? Which is still pretty loose definition. Damian Senadinos, he's a speaker locally into Columbus, fantastic speaker. He does this thing called a definition dissection. And what he does is he takes the thing that you're trying to define and he breaks it up into its components and then defines those and then puts the definition together to form the larger definition of the word. So psychological is the mental or emotional state, and safety is protected from danger. So psychological safety is your mental or emotional state is protected from danger. Now that still feels just a little bit loose. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a concrete example. Let's say your coworker is about to do something less than best. Are you comfortable telling them that? Are you comfortable having a discussion and saying, I think what you're doing is wrong? Are they okay hearing that? And does it work in reverse? So if I'm going to do something that's wrong, or that's less than best, or that we can improve upon in some way, is my team comfortable coming to me and saying that? Can I get honest and direct feedback from my team? And it's also important to point out that the risk of this is everywhere. So it could be a pull request or a design review, an architectural meeting, in any situation where you're interacting with someone or you're looking at the work of someone, this can occur. This is very important in that aspect, in every aspect of work. So that is psychological safety, and again, we'll look through some stereotypes. So the first one is the hero programmer. This person is the person that does the vast majority of, no, not the vast majority. Who's read the Phoenix Project? Has anybody read the Phoenix Project? So to really quickly provide a summary, the Phoenix Project is all about this person, Brent. And Brent, in this case, is the hero programmer. All work at some point in time pretty much has to be touched by Brent. Brent has the institutional knowledge. Brent knows the development cycles. Brent knows what the customer wants. Brent's got the trust of customer service. Brent is the backbone, the hero of that work. And he might not even be intending to do that. He's just been put in a situation where the structure of the organization has put him in a position that he can't control anymore. So in my experience, this is not a bad thing necessarily. It's just the way that organization has shaped one person to be more responsible for things than perhaps anyone would like. So the next one is the Joker. This in this case, this was me, and it's something that I'm not super proud of, but I also didn't know it at the time. So a buddy of mine and I were co-leads of a team. So we had a team putting data into a system, and then a team getting data out of a system, an ingestion and a reporting team. And he led the other team. And him and I were very close, and we would sometimes make fun of each other in meetings about, like, hey, did you write this code? Yeah, it's crap. It's total junk. There's an XKCD cartoon about two people looking at a bit of code, and it's like, I looked at Stack Overflow, and this is how I got this. And the other person says, was it the question or was it the answer? And that's the way we were with each other, and we were very willing to overlook that, kind of like insulting aspect of each other. And sometimes we would do it in meetings. And what I didn't realize at the time, and later come to find out, that other people in the meeting would hesitate to speak up because they thought we would direct that. And that was a really, really, really bad situation for them to be in. And it wasn't until about a year or two later that a former coworker who I remained friends with told me about it, that he would sit in a meeting and he would know that we were taking a wrong step, that we were taking a misstep, that we had designed something a little bit incorrectly, or that we could add efficiencies in one way or another. And he wouldn't speak up about it because he was afraid that we would make fun of his code, or we would make fun of the way he was doing something, or the way he was talking about that change. The next one is the strong silent type. This is the person that sits in the meeting, goes to the desk, does the work, but wouldn't object, wouldn't add that 2 cents. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Joker. It could be anyone. It could just be that they don't feel comfortable speaking up. It might not be their technical ability. It might not be their fear of getting, insulted. It's just that they don't feel comfortable speaking up for whatever reason. So we had these quarterly meetings where the first couple that I went to were very stuffy, very, very boring, very, very long. 2 days worth of meetings, and we were planning out the next quarter. And it was all about, how many of the sprint goal, how many of the quarter goals have you estimated? How many of them can you get in? We're planning out our next 3 months of work. And no one would kind of raise their hand and say, that's not possible, or that's not likely, or hey, we forgot about this thing. It was just a 2-day event where everyone listened to the craziest presentation about how your future looked, and it never came true. So what I realized was that a lot of the people in the room had that feedback to give, but didn't feel safe giving it. So what I vowed to do was be the dumbest person in the room. At first, it was just like asking questions that everybody knew the answer to, but just to hear somebody say it. And then I started wearing costumes. Like I'd come to work as a banana, and I'd go to this meeting and sit in the back in a full-body banana costume. And then I'd ask questions as a banana, or I'd give presentations as a banana. Yeah, right. And what I found was that people spoke up a little more easily if they weren't going to be the dumbest looking person in the room, because that guy in the back's got that covered. And that was a really easy way to just add levity to the room, just to say, you know what, ask your question. You're not going to look dumber than he is. And we made a lot of changes around the same time. Meetings became half-day meetings instead of 2-day meetings. That wasn't because I was wearing a banana suit, but it was because we were communicating better about those things. We were all open to having the conversation, and it wasn't just a PowerPoint slide anymore. It was real work that was being done, and people were not afraid to say, like, that's not possible. That's not going to happen. So tell that guy to wear a banana suit, I think is the moral of that story. But how does Google suggest? So Google suggests that you solicit input and opinions from the group, share information about personal work style preferences, and encourage others to do the same. And then watch these 2 TED Talks. So this is actually Google's suggestion, and I thought these 2 were amazing. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper on those 2 suggestions with a little bit of my own interpretations. So Amy Edmondson, she has a TED Talk on psychological safety. It's absolutely amazing, and the starter of it is, no one wants to go into work and seem ignorant, incompetent, intrusive, or negative. No one wants to go in and say, like, this is the way we're doing it, and be wrong. No one wants to feel like they're bossing everybody around. That's just not something you go in and be like, hey, I want to do this today. So people tend to kind of clam up and not put that input into the world, not put that feedback into the world. And that makes everybody go slower. That makes problems get swept under the rug. That's a problem. So something you can do in order to build safety in your team is frame everything as a learning problem, that no one knows the answer. No one's come into this particular problem before. You might have come into similar problems, but this is learning for everybody, just like this presentation is learning for me. Acknowledge fallibility at all levels and model curiosity. From your leaders on down, ask questions. Seek to understand everything about it a little bit better. The Margaret Heffernan talk on super chickens. It's a really, really interesting study where they took chickens, which are really easy to measure the output of. The efficiency of a chicken can be measured by time versus eggs produced. You just know that's the efficiency of that chicken. And what they did was they moved chickens, the highest they put into one coop, and then the highest performing chickens they put into a larger coop until they had just a bunch of super performing chickens all in one coop. And what they found was that actually that didn't work at all, that those super performing chickens actually pecked each other near to death. And it was because in their lower groups, they were super performing chickens because they were pushing everybody else down a little bit, not because they themselves were overperforming. Then they took a similar study and did it with people. So they took people, gave them a simple problem and measured how long it took to solve that problem. And there were 3 factors that came into effect in predicting who was going to be the best performer of this test. The first was empathy. The teams with the highest empathy performed best on this challenge. The second one was equal time. So if everybody spoke up roughly the same amount of time, if everybody got the same amount of time trying to say, like, this, we should try that, they performed better. And the third factor, does anybody want to take a guess what the third factor was? Females. The higher ratio of female to male, the better the teams did. So there's conflict is frequent when candor is safe. That's all about psychological safety. You're going to have conflict, and that's just kind of table stakes to a high-performing team. If you've got an opinion, be able to defend your opinion. And if you're proven wrong, abandon it quickly. The last little bit in Margaret Heffernan's study, or TED Talk, is about pitting employees against each other. An example of that is when you have a review process that says, how good is this person at something, some technical thing. Like in a prior role, every year we had to judge everyone on our team on how good they were at Java, which meant for the month or 2 prior to our review, no one would ask Java questions because they didn't want to be seen as not knowing Java. But if instead you rephrase the question to say, how much has this person helped you learn Java? Then you're incentivizing that person to actually help. to admit weakness, and to get help. So from within, these are the things you can do: solicit opinions, ask questions, even the stupid ones, answer them, even the stupid ones, and be an example, even a stupid one. Assume good intent, and the strong opinions weakly held, that's what I was referring to earlier, where if you have an opinion, defend it. Like, hold on to that opinion strongly. But if you have a discussion and you realize your opinion was wrong, abandon it. Don't hold on to that. Just get rid of it. Ultimately, the whole purpose of the talk is to make your team more efficient. And if Google's factors don't vibe with you, if Google's factors aren't what's connecting you to past teams and how those teams could have gotten better or could have gotten worse, there are certainly other models. This is 3 examples that I found in 3 minutes of Googling. Find a model that works for you. Find a model that helps explain the teams that you've been on, the teammates that you've worked with, and keep those things in mind. And last but not least, it's communicate. So a lot of these things just boil down to have an open line of communication, and get comfortable there as best you can. Okay, so that's the summary. Is the team comfortable speaking up? Can you depend on one another? Do you know who does what? Those are 3 really important questions. These are legally obligated to be on the screen at some point. These are all the people that helped me put this together by posting videos or pictures on Flickr. Thank you, anonymous people, non-anonymous people. And then this is kind of the end slide. So rework.withgoogle.com. If you've got a question about psychological safety, how you can evaluate your team, dependability, any of the factors that were talked about here, and the study itself, and all kinds of other information that is super helpful, check out that site. These 2 TED Talks I talked about, this TED Talk is kind of about backstabbing and how you can approach that in a workplace, how you can improve a workplace around that. This site again, because seriously, if you don't take anything else from this talk, go visit that site. And then the last little bit is me. If you need to get in touch with me, there's 2 ways to do it. I'm also on the LinkedIn, and I'm here in front of you today. If you have a question, feel free, come on up. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Thank you.